This recording is for layout 3. You've had a chance to practice with a couple other things in layout, and now we're going to do a more advanced multi-page layout for a magazine article. So the first thing you should have done was download the 2 option folders we've provided you with and select one of the articles to create a layout for. In this case, I've selected option 2, which is about making pizza, because who doesn't like pizza? The first thing I'm going to do, so the images we provided to you, you're welcome to use, or you could create your own if you happen to be someone who's really good at photography and doesn't like these images. Is I'm going to want to make sure that these are formatted correctly as well as select my images. So what I want to do is I want to highlight all of these. I could look in these in some preview viewer, but I'm just going to open them in Photoshop because I need to do my editing and make sure they're the proper resolution and the proper color mode. So I've selected everything and I can either right click or control click and open with. And there's something like open with on both a Mac and a PC. And select Photoshop, and it's going to go ahead and open all my images. So I can get an idea as I go kind of what's available. This is a sort of recipe deal where it's trying to show you how to make pizza. So I can kind of click through here and get an idea of what I want. There's a lot of these sort of assembly photos. I'll probably use some of those, not all of them, but you can choose what you want to highlight. But this is an image that's really nice. It works well for our page. It's wider than it is tall, so it works perfectly for our page. So what I'm going to start with is checking its color mode. So up here in image, I want to go ahead to mode and select CMYK. And it may give you a message like this, say okay, you're fine with changing the color mode. It just wants to make sure you're doing the right thing. The next thing I want to do is check the resolution. Again, image size. So I can see that the resolution is 300 pixels per inch, and it's just shy of 8 inches by 11 inches. Not quite the right size, but pretty close to it. So I'm just going to click OK, and to fix the size issue, what we're going to do is use crop. Sounds like a weird thing. Why would I use crop? The image is smaller than what I needed. But what crop lets me do is if I select this W times H or width times height times resolution, it allows me to set specific values. So I can get the exact size I want. So I want it slightly larger than my actual 8.5 by 11 page because it needs to bleed, which means it needs to go past the edge because we plan on this being an edge-to-edge image. And anything that hits the edges of your pages needs to actually bleed or be larger than. So I'll type 8.75, I'll type 11.5, and I'll type 300 because that's my resolution. So now when I click on here, I know I'm in my editing mode. I get these little X's across, or this guide across the page, and I can decide what I want, knowing that a little bit will get cut off on one side and the top and bottom. I do want room for text, so I'm actually going to move this down. I'm going to hold Shift to make sure that I don't accidentally slip to the side and get white, because I want to make sure that I can clearly see our hands, and then I have plenty of room to put my title and my type later. Once I'm happy with this, I can hit enter or return. And now I have my image the way I want it. I could just go to save, or I might do save as. I'm going to actually do save as because I want to name this something so I'm not having to click on each of the images later to figure out what I want. So we'll go to File, Save As. And I want to find the right folder. So I'm coming in here, look at my images, and what I usually do within here is make a new folder called Final Images, because whether I've gathered a lot of images or my client sent me a lot of images, I may need to do some editing. I'm going to change the name to Kneading Dough because that's what she's doing. I always like to name my images and my files exactly what they are. So if it's a year from now, I don't have to guess what I'm doing. I can leave it as JPEG. I still prefer TIFF, but nowadays, really, even PSD can be put in here, but I'm old school. I like TIFF. So I'm going to click save. It's going to ask you some questions. If you do TIFF or JPEG, just say okay. It usually defaults to the correct thing, so you don't really need to worry about it too much. And it's going to take a second here. This is a large file. I think it's 34 megabytes, which is fairly decent size, and it's going to process, and it's going to save our file for us. So we're going to give it a second. Now I could do some color correction here if I don't love the color. This is a little dated looking in the image, kind of very yellow, not that exciting. If you do want to do some basic color correction, and I wouldn't recommend going crazy, again, image adjustments. I could do brightness and contrast. I can do hue, saturation. I could even do color balance here, which lets me, kind of change this photo, make it a little less yellow, a little more blue, kind of gives it a little different look. I could also use stuff like brightness and contrast, make it maybe a little bit brighter, a little fresher looking. You can do different things with it. You can kind of think of those modes as a way to do your own version of an Instagram filter. And not quite to that same level or ease, but in that neighborhood. And so up here, I know I've made these edits. There's a little star. It needs to be saved. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I'm going to close this. And I want to select some of these other ones. I probably want this one with ingredients. This is really good. So we're going to go ahead and make some quick changes to this. I'm probably going to leave these at the size they are, so long as the resolution's right. This one's resolution also is right. I'm just going to go ahead and do save as, put it in that file, final images. This one I'll call ingredients. For the purpose, just again, of finding it. It doesn't need to be super fancy here. Close that one. I'm going to go through and just look real quick. So I don't really, for my purposes, I don't really want this really greasy one. Same with, there's some down here at the end that were a little greasier. That doesn't really work for what I'm going for. I want to focus on sort of the same person kind of making it. But it's up to you. And you could even take pictures if you, want to make a pizza or have pizza and you want to take a butter shot. I'm going to save this one, converting it to the CMYK, because we like to see the finished sort of money shot. And I'm going to double check the image size, although they all seem to be correct. So I'm going to save and close this one. I'm probably going to skip this one with the rolling out the dough because I need to limit some things. I'll probably skip this one. The cheese is a nice shot. I also like that these other ones are consistently horizontally larger than vertically, so it'll work well if I need to crop or I want to do sort of an even mode piece with the steps. And then just again double check, and it might seem annoying to have to check everything, but it's always good to make sure your files are formatted, that you know exactly what they are and that they are all the proper resolution. You can hope that someone's sending it to you correctly or that you downloaded the correct thing, but rarely does that ever actually happen. And let's see what else. This is another one I don't want. This is another one because it doesn't match our pizza, even though that one's slightly more appetizing. I already have one of them needing dough, so I don't need that one. It's another dough needing, and maybe you'd like this one better than the one with all the flour. It's up to you as to what you decide to pick. Make it your own. Don't just copy what I'm doing. Let's see. I'll probably take this one with the sauce too. I'm naming everything. I'm not leaving anything image or these numbers because that just causes problems later. A year from now, I won't remember what that is. Actually, probably a week from now, I won't remember what that is. I'll probably not do that one. That's not that visually interesting to me. trying to decide. This one might be a nice one too to have, so let's go ahead and convert that. But yeah, just because we gave you the images, don't assume that they are the right resolution. Let's go ahead and put this one in. And sometimes I pull more images than I actually use because I don't know exactly what I want. I might have a general idea, I might have a direction I want to go, but sometimes things don't work out as I planned, or when I actually get into making the document, I'm like, no, this doesn't work that well for an image. I would rather something else. I'm gonna close that one. So I've gotten all my images. I'm gonna come here now to InDesign. I have my text document here, but I'm gonna actually show you how to place that in your thing without having to open and copy paste. So I'm gonna do a new document. I could click new, go up to file new, or my preferred method is Command N or Control N on a PC to open my dialog box. Now this time we're gonna want facing pages. This is a magazine article. Magazines normally have 2 pages that face each other when the spread's open to you. Number of pages is 4, but we're going to start with page number 2, which may not seem logical. But page 1 is always a right-hand page, so it's by itself when you do a document. So we want to start with 2 because we want 2 different spreads. I'm looking at letter, that's what 8.5 by 11 is. Columns, I'm a fan of a 3-column grid for my magazine. However, a 2-column can work. Some people also will use 6 columns because it's flexible enough to do 2 or 3 columns. If you look through a magazine, you can get an idea of sort of what you want, what works well. As to the gutter, I'd say something like 0.125, 0.15 maybe is a good gutter. You can always change this later. Margins, I'll leave them at usually 1/2 inch is good for me, which is actually what this is defaulting to, even though it says picas here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and it's going to create my document for me. Hopefully. And what it'll do is it'll create a 4-page document. Apparently my computer really doesn't want to cooperate with me today. Alright, so we used this a little bit in the first assignment. We're going to use it now again here. So if we go to the pages panel, we should see 2 different pages. I have no idea why my pages are not showing up here. Let me just try real quick to minimize this. Okay, there we go. All right, so you'll see here in the page document we have 2 sets of pages that we can use. And we're going to want to put text in, but before I even put text in, I want to work on my master page. So I want to come here to the master page, and certain things appear on a master page in a magazine. Things like a header and a footer and a page number. So I'm actually going to start with the page number, and I'm going to click on my text tool, and I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to draw a text box. Now I could type into this, but I actually don't want to type into it yet. I want to come up here to type and insert special character, go to markers and current page number. So this is going to insert a placeholder that will automatically, what we call, paginate your document. So whatever page number you actually see, it will put it in the document without you having to type it. You only have to format it here. So I'm going to click current page number. It's going to put in A because this is master page A. So it's always going to show an A on my master page. I'm going to choose a font for this. I think I'll just go with Dominion Pro right now for the sake of argument. 12 point's a little big, so I'm going to put it down to 10 point. I might even bring in some guidelines to decide where I want this to go so that I can be consistent. If we remember, if we want to change this, we can control click or right click here. Change this over to inches. I'm going to put it at so that this one is sitting 1/4 of an inch from each of the edges of the page. You can choose wherever you want. You probably don't want it any closer though than 1/4 of an edge. So you'll also notice, so here we have these pink and purple lines. Here is sort of the black or the edge of the page. The pink and purple are margins. They are not our bounding box or the edge of our page. This is the edge of our page, edge of our page, edge of our page. These are just where we try to keep any important copy out of. So now that I have that A in place, I need to put one on the other side. I can again give myself some guidelines on this side. And I could draw another text box if I wanted to. Or I can just copy this one. So Command C or Control C on a PC. Come over here, Command V, Control V on a PC. I'm going to actually change this one to right aligned instead of left aligned because I want it on that side of the page. And I'm going to put it here, scoot it down. There are my 2 A's. Now I also want to put a footer here just to show you guys how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a text box. I'll call this just my magazine because usually we have the name of the magazine somewhere. I'm going to insert the little line, which is actually above your return key. There's a backslash. If you hold shift, you can get this little line. Let's just say it's September right now, so September 2017. That's the type of things we'll see in footers usually on a magazine. I'll just keep with Dominion Pro for right now. You can choose whatever font you want. I'm going to knock this down to 10 point to match my page number. I'm also going to, because I want to align this with this edge, I'm going to choose to right align this. You can choose a variety of different things, and again, it may be helpful to look at actual magazines to see kind of what they do, and it depends on the magazine as to what they have. And I'm going to have this sort of sit on the edge and make sure to line it up here, and then I'll again copy it, paste it, and I'm going to, this one I will want left aligned because I'm putting it on the opposite side of the page. Gonna go ahead and put that in here and line this up. So that looks good. You should also, for your assignment, I believe you also have to put a header in, but for right now, we're just gonna proceed with this. And I'm going to click to leave the master page. I now see this is on all my pages. The difference though being that you notice now there are page numbers on here. So I'm going to go ahead so I don't forget to do this and save my document. Always save, especially when you're going to be spending this much time on a layout. So I'm going to go ahead and in that option 2 folder for now, I'm going to put my layout. And then the next thing I most likely want to do is place my text to get an idea of how much room that text is actually going to take up. So I can place that Word document directly in here. I don't need to copy and paste it. So I'm going to go ahead, go up to File, Place, or Command D on a Mac, Control D on a PC, and we're going to select the document. I'm going to find this option 2 folder, and I'm going to select Making Pizza at Home. And it's going to take a second here to process. I'm going to go ahead and click Open, and then we're going to get the ability to place it. We see sort of the start of the text and a little sort of text icon. Because I'm going to use this whole page for an image, I'm going to start my text over here. And you'll notice when I click here in the column, it fills the whole width of the column. and it goes down to the end. So it kind of defaults to those columns. That's why they're important. And when it hits the end of what it can fill in a column, you'll see this little red plus. You can click the plus, and you're going to just keep adding the text. So we've run out of text at this point, but that gives us an idea. It's not set totally. We're going to want to add some pictures, but you get the idea to start with. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and also place the image. You place the image just like the text. We're going to go to File, Place here. And I'm going to start in my final images with that main sort of hero, get your attention one, which was the kneading dough. And it gives you a little icon. You want to be careful not to click on a text box or anything. If you're not sure where things are, you can always click over here in the gray. And you'll notice when you load this image, as we said before, it's larger than the page in order for us to have it where we can have it bleed off the edges. If it bothers you and you have a hard time understanding where the edge of the page is, you can always, with your text box, kind of do this, and that's going to go ahead and shrink it, just remembering that before you sent it out to print, you want to actually have it bleed. So with this one, Making Pizza at Home is the title. I want to go ahead and I'm going to actually cut this out because I don't want it part of the main flowing text. That becomes problematic for me. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. And I'm going to draw a new text box and place that in there. Now I have a couple options. There's not a lot of text here, and I'm realizing that now, and even with, adding some more spacing and things and adding pictures, I probably don't even need to put my title here. I can probably just leave this image as it is and give myself some more space. So what I'm actually going to go back and do, I'm going to delete the space from where I deleted that, and I'm going to take this down and I'm going to put it at about the 5-inch mark. I'm deciding the 5 inches somewhat arbitrarily, but I'm just going to say, okay, I'm giving this a little bit more white space. I have the room, I might as well use it. I think the other article has more text, so you may not have as much space. You're going to have to play with it. You do want to make sure, though, that your columns are even, especially at the bottom. If you look through publications, they usually have nice, even columns. So this extra text, I'm going to click the plus again, and I can go to the next page. That's why InDesign is so great for what we call multi-page documents, because it lets us easily go from page to page, and we can adjust the columns accordingly. So now I can put this Making Pizza at Home over here, and I can decide what I want to do with it, how big I want to make it. There's no hard and fast rule. Typically, we try to limit the amount of fonts we do in layout, but in the case of the title, that's often a different font than the rest. It's up to you, whatever you think makes sense. This is defaulting to whatever Microsoft Word put in here. I'm just going to, for the sake of getting this done here in a timely fashion, I'll just click the Minion Pro Bold, make it a lot larger, decide exactly how much larger I want it to be. I really want this to be on 2 lines. That might be a little too big. And with anything, we talked before in Layout 1 that you don't want the headlines usually at minimum 24 point, but probably more 30 and above. And it can be big. I don't like my leading here. It's way too big, so I'm going to shrink that up a little bit. And I can change the color, so I might decide I want red. It kind of matches with my photo. It's up to you what colors, things you want to use. I'm also going to remember to turn off these boxes, extras, hide frame edges, so I don't keep seeing these. And I might actually shrink up this leading a little bit more. And it's a matter of both personal preference, what I'm doing, as well as just what really works and looks good. There's not a perfect answer as to how to get good at this. It just takes practice. It takes a lot of time paying attention to things that are done well, looking at stuff to get a good idea. So I've got, you know, a much better set. I'm noticing there's a missing return here. I could also, so sometimes you'll notice with articles, they kind of have a subhead, something that introduces them. So you could decide to use this first piece of text as a subhead, make it a little bit larger. But to start with, to get a base like font size for everything, I'm going to highlight everything. It's defaulting to Times. I'm going to make it the Minion Pro. I do recommend with your body copy, again, don't go crazy. Everything shouldn't have a different font. Pick one sort of standard body copy font, usually a serif or a sans serif. You don't want to use what we call display fonts, which are the kind of funky ones. A good way to identify a display font is, would you want to read 10 pages of it at 8 point? If the answer is no, then that's a display font. I'm going to set the font size here. I think 10 looks good. I'm going to actually increase my leading a little bit on this. I have the space, I might as well use it. I'm going to take it up 2 points from what the default is. And you'll notice it looks a little whiter here. There's more space. It feels like it can breathe a little bit more to me. And so I could decide to make this more like subhead text, knock this up like 14 point. Again, I'll adjust the leading to make sense. It's up to you what you want to do. You could even, if you wanted to, take this box, stretch it across 2 columns, and then adjust accordingly. We can add extra text boxes in here. I'm just going to pull that down so I can get that in the right spot. And I can click, even when there's not a red plus, if there's the little linking document, I can click that to make a new column if I need to. But I want to make sure that these 2 columns are lined up with each other. And I'll start playing with this to get this a little bit more even. But that's a pretty good option, a nice introduction. I could fuss with this a little bit more, but I think this is a pretty good start here. And I'm just doing rough things right now. I also want to decide what my subhead is. This I want to bump up a little bigger. You don't have to necessarily, these little headings do that, but I'm going to bump it up about 2 points. I'm going to leave, for now, my leading the same. I can always change it. And I'm going to change this from regular to semi-bold, give it a little more weight, and I'm going to make it red. So something you want to do, so I could do that step on any of these other ones, but that's a lot of clicks. I can come over here, or you can come up to window and open this too. But it might be helpful. I like working with a typography layout for my sort of screen setup. You can come to workspace and select typography, or you can open stuff. Everything's under type and tables here. But I'm going to create a paragraph style so that I don't have to do all those clicks again. Once I go to paragraph styles, I can click the plus, I can click to add a new style here with this page, or I could come here and do new paragraph style. Either one is fine. And what this is going to do, it's going to default, it's going to take all those settings I just made and hold on to them. We could default to paragraph style, but I'm going to call this section header, because that's basically what it is. I again like to name stuff what they are. And I want to do this really for like this text, for the body text, for everything. But the nice part is, now that I've created the paragraph style, I can come to the other ones, so the making pizza sauce, and just click the section header and it automatically changes it. Go to pizza topping, do the same thing, baking the pizza, repeat. So ingredients and process will be different, and I'll get to those in a second, but we've kind of set up the first ones. So with ingredients and process, I'm probably going to leave those the same size. I want to delete my colon. I prefer ingredients and process to look the same. and I'm going to highlight it, ingredients, and I'm just going to make this the semi-bold. I'm not going to change anything else about it. It just gives it a little more weight. So again, I'm going to come over here, add this as a new paragraph style. I'll just call it ingredient header. Even though I'll use it for process too, it'll be fine. It'll work for my purposes. And we're not grading you necessarily on did you use the exact name. So I'm going to select that one for any spot where that needs to be used. So I've set up all those clicks and made those decisions, and now it will just apply it. It's really nice if you change your mind. So let's say I decided, oh, you know what, I really don't like, I don't want it just semi-bold. I want it to be something else. I can double click and open it, and I could come in and change it. So maybe I decide instead of just semi-bold, I want semi-bold italic. I can select that and click OK, and now you'll notice it changes everywhere that is. That's an important part of this and what will help you. I'm going to change it back because I don't actually want it italic. And we're going to put the semi-bold, click OK. Okay, so what I want to go ahead and do now is I want to format my ingredients, which are a little tricky. We want to properly set them, and we'll do the same thing with process. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I want to be able to see this. I could properly set these the different cap height or the different fractions here. It'll actually, you notice when I highlight this, it's giving me some options. InDesign does this well. Once I do one, I can copy it and I could paste it to the other 1/2. So I'm doing less actual typing, and I can repeat that process here. And so InDesign, this is why I said it likes to help you, and it usually does a pretty good job. It's gotten really good at helping you and being smart. And I'll repeat this for everywhere I need it, because this used to be a much more trying process to do. And then you can decide how you want to set these. You could leave it like this. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to read. What I usually like to do is open the tab panel. Command-Shift-T or Control-Shift-T should open it. You could also come up to Window and open it, and you'll see the tabs. I can decide how, like, where I think I want to put tabs in. What I might want to do is align all the ingredients separate from the measurements. So I'll put one where I want the ingredients, one where I want the measurements, and this one I'm going to change how it's aligning, and I can just kind of come in here and make some tweaks. And if you want to fix the grammar and things like that, because that's your thing, go ahead. There's some things I'm changing because I have different preferences. And then the nice part is on this line, I can get it to line up too. I'm just using the tab key, allows me to line it up. I picked the one, so I saw that this one was the longest, and I use that as my sort of guideline here. To where I wanted to line everything up against. And these you'll have to do twice because you want them here. And then again, we can use the paragraph styles to set this as an actual thing. So I'll come to new paragraph style, and we're just going to call this ingredients this time because that's what it is. Click OK. You'll notice by default this keeps whatever the last one is. You can hit the plus. Let's come down here. Why is that not Roman? And we can repeat that step here. Just want to check that this is correct. I didn't want it semi-bold. All right, so I can repeat that here, and that's gonna put my tabs in for me. So if I come here, I repeat that process of just clicking the tab key. I'm not a fan of fonts being tall or capital. But you notice I didn't have to set those guides again. They're automatically in place because I applied the paragraph style to it. I also, though, need to adjust the fractions don't just immediately default, but it looks like there's only one fraction this time. It's nice that this isn't a fraction heavy situation. I've done catalogs before where it's all fractions all the time, which is very time consuming. So I'll come in here and repeat that process. Again, it's really nice that InDesign now offers this for you. You don't have to kind of do it. Now the process will be a little bit different because it needs to be set a little bit differently. So I'm gonna highlight my whole first process, and let me make sure there's nothing over here. Okay, so this goes all the way to here. So what I want to do, again, I still have my tabs panel open, but this one's going to work a little different because we need to do what we call hanging these. You hang bullets and you hang numbers. So you have this little alignment tool here. What I want to do is click to drag both pieces out. And what I do is I look, and it depends on my numbers. If I have like up to number 10, I'm going to do this a little differently than if I only have regular numbers. So I'm going to go ahead here and drag it out so it's lining up for about where I want my the actual text part, not the number, to start. And I see it's 0.1667, and I'm going to remember that number because I'm going to need it in a second. And then now I only want to drag the top half back to 0, or minus 0.1667. Now to properly hang these even on this line, I need to add a tab. I'm going to pull this back to that 0.1667, and I'm going to make sure it's a left justified tab. Where does that come into play? You'll notice like the space here is slightly off of that. I'm just going to come in and hit the tab key to make sure that space is right. But you'll notice there now the numbers are all hung properly between both spots. And if you ever see documents, that's usually how you see numbers hung. There are arguments for why you could do it differently, but I happen to prefer hanging my numbers and my bullets this way. You definitely are always supposed to hang bullets this way, but some people do numbers that are set as part of text. I'm also going to add some space here after these just to give it a little extra. In the paragraph panel, it's defaulting to a little bit of space. I'm going to give it just a little bit more. Bump this up, and you notice this is just giving me a little extra space. These steps have a lot of involvement to them, and I think this helps just give it a little pause. And I'm going to go ahead and just highlight this. I don't have to highlight all of it, just part of it. And now this paragraph style I'll call process. So I'm going to go ahead and continue and put the next process in place by clicking the paragraph style. And I can put those tabs back. And a lot of this is just what style. If you chose the other article, you're not going to need to do this. That was kind of my other logic between choosing this particular one, was this has a little bit more finesse that you need to put in place. I'm going to actually change this one over to make this, it's not specifically a process, but I'm going to make it a process. And if you notice any weird returns like this, you can always fix those. To correct this, the fastest thing is to actually have a body text or paragraph style that I'm going to put in place that I should have done earlier. And then I can fix this one. I'm not sure why it's doing the weird returns, but it is. Sometimes when you bring stuff in from Word, it'll have some formatting that you just have to kind of contend with. but I can make these the right number here. So we'll do this one period. That way I can get them right, because I like the consistency here. This is one of those things, clients may give you something, but you can always say to them, hey, this makes more sense. Don't be afraid to do that. And I'm going to close this now, but I've kind of got the general idea of the text. I am noticing, like, I'm not liking this sort of funky little go around here, and this is where probably the most annoying part of publication design is trying to figure out how do I make this work and make sense. I'm just gonna do this, and I'm going to dump this one because we don't want just one line of that here. And then we get closer, and I can just shift this down so I'm closer to the bottom of my page, and this will look a lot better. It's still not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot closer than it was before. I can always keep tweaking it and getting it exactly where I want. Then I know on this page, I'm going to want to put some of those images in. I'm not sure exactly where right now, but I'm going to guess. I'm going to stick with that 5 guideline that I used before. Because I like consistency, but you can choose whatever works for you. And play. You'll notice sometimes, depending on where it's breaking, you add a return here. I usually just come down and pull the space, at least temporarily. The problem is that then means your text can sometimes run over where you don't want it, so you kind of got to be careful about it and pay attention. Put some more stuff in place. So still a little short on text, but this is where you can kind of figure out what makes sense to you. And maybe, you know, you put a lot more images here and do your text. But for now, I'm not going to spend all the time perfectly laying it out, but you get the general idea of what you need to do, and it's starting to come together. And when you're ready to submit this, you'll make it a PDF to show in class. File export will allow you to do that. And to submit it to your instructor, you want to make sure all your images, all your fonts, everything you use goes to them. So I'm going to go to File, Package. And because I changed everything, there's no RGB. This is another last check to make sure you did this correctly. Does it say RGB is used, and it'll probably have a yellow triangle next to it, then you haven't done it correctly and you need to fix it. But we can go ahead and click Package. We can ignore this unless you were sending it out for professional printing. You might want to put your company information, but you're just doing this for class. I'm going to go ahead and save this in the option 2. It's going to give me a folder just based on the file name. Make sure it says copy fonts, link graphics. It also by default will include an IDML file. This is great if someone doesn't have the exact same version of InDesign as you. They can still open it. It basically saves it down. And then including a PDF. So I'll go ahead and click Package. You'll get the font warning. You click OK. And that's going to go ahead and create a folder. Depending on what you have in here, it's going to depend on how long it takes. More images usually take longer. But it does the hard part or the heavy lifting for you, and it makes a folder with everything you need to turn in. So that is how you would do layout 3. Hopefully it all makes sense. I know I went pretty quickly and I definitely didn't finish it, but it gets you enough to get you started. If you have any questions, come into the lab, talk to one of the instructors, or talk to one of the lab assistants and they can assist you.